Today, we're going to be talking to an agent whose team does over $1 billion in transactions a year, and he's going to share with you exactly how he coaches his team to do that much production. I hope you're excited. Stay tuned. This episode of Keeping It Real is brought to you by Real Geeks. How many homes are you going to sell this year? Do you have the right tools? Is your website turning soft leads into interested buyers? Are you spending money on leads that aren't converting? Well, Real Geeks is your solution. Find out why agents across the country choose Real Geeks as their technology partner. Real Geeks was created by an agent for agents. They pride themselves on delivering a sales and marketing solution so that you can easily generate more business. Their agent websites are fast and built for lead conversion with a smooth search experience for your visitors. Real Geeks also includes an easy-to-use agent CRM. So once a lead signs up on your website, you can track their interest and have great follow-up conversations. Real Geeks is loaded with a ton of marketing tools to nurture your leads and increase brand awareness. Visit realgeeks.com/keepingitrealpod and find out why realtors come to Real Geeks to generate more business. Again, visit realgeeks.com/keepingitrealpod. And now, on to our show. Hey, podcast listeners, are you trying to figure out how you can actively prospect on Instagram to grow and expand your existing community without feeling like you need more followers or more people in your database? Well, Michelle Berman-Michael, who I've interviewed on this show, has not only given hope to those who feel overwhelmed by Instagram, but has also created a strategy that will teach you how to create killer content without needing a videographer, how to prospect using Instagram in minutes, not hours, and how to get more engagement without posting every day. Now, this program is called Beyond the Method, and it will show you exactly how to master Instagram so that you can generate more real estate business. Keeping It Real podcast listeners get a 10% discount on the program, but only if you visit igcourse.com. That's igcourse.com. And now, on to our show. Hello and welcome to another episode of Keeping It Real, the largest podcast made by real estate agents and for real estate agents. My name's DJ Paris. I'm your guide and host through the show. And in just a moment, we're going to be speaking with top producer Jim Remley. But before we get to Jim, just a few quick reminders. As always, please share this episode with a friend. Think of another agent, maybe one in your own office that could use a little coaching tip, and shoot them over a link either to our website, which is keepingitrealpod.com, where all of our episodes are available for streaming, or just have them pull up a podcast app, search for Keeping It Real, hit that subscribe button. Also, please, everybody, leave us a review in iTunes or Spotify or whatever app you're using. Let us know what you think of the show. We appreciate it, and we make changes based on your feedback. So appreciate that too. And last, please check out our sponsors. We love our sponsors. They're the reason that we can keep doing our show. So check out their products and services and consider adding them into your business. All right, guys, let's get to the main event, my conversation with Jim Remley. Okay, today on the show, we really have a true Renaissance man, Jim Remley. I want to tell you, Jim is a very humble person, but I'm going to brag for him because what he has accomplished is nothing really short of remarkable. Not only has he been a top producer, he's also a brokerage owner. He is a recruiter. He is a podcast host, an author, an educator for National Association of Realtors. This man does it all, and we are so honored to have him on the show. But let me actually tell you more about Jim. So Jim Remley began his real estate. This is also incredible. He began his real estate career at 19 and quickly became a top performer, which nobody does at 19 except Jim. He ranked in the top 1% of realtors nationwide, which is insane. Within a year, he listed over 150 properties. And by the age of 24, he founded the largest independent real estate company in Oregon. Of course he did, growing it to 17 offices. With his extensive experience, Jim became an instructor for the National Association of Realtors and co-founded the Luxury Home Council. He authored the the accredited luxury home specialist designation, ALSH, and 3 best-selling books, including Sell Your Home in Any Market. Jim's expertise has led to appearances on various television and radio programs, including CNN's Open House. He currently leads one of Oregon's largest real estate firms, closing 3,000 transactions annually with a sales volume of over $1.4 billion, and aims to help agents and brokers accelerate their performance. Jim also hosts the podcast E-Real Estate Coach, where you can find wherever podcasts are served. So there's so many things about Jim. If you go into our description, we're going to have links to his podcast, his coaching, and also his books on Amazon. But if you want to check out his coaching offering, erealestatecoach.com. And before we bring him on, if you are a realtor in the Southern Oregon area and you would like to work with Jim, I know I would if I lived there. I would want to check out to see what Jim's brokerages offers. You can reach out to Jim directly. He is with John L. Scott, and he has that's his brokerage in Southern Oregon, and we'll give you his contact information shortly. Jim, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much. That's quite an introduction. I appreciate that. I'm excited to be with you.
You've done quite a lot, and I'm actually a little intimidated. So I appreciate a fellow podcast host and author, and the National Association of Realtors is our backyard here. So I can appreciate that. I actually would like to serve at the national level, so I'm in the process of going through the ranks to hopefully get to help out in some way. But I would love to really learn more about you. First of all, starting a real estate career at 19 is, well, everyone listening knows that's not an easy thing. And tell us sort of why you did that, and then how you became so successful so quickly.
Well, I was a college dropout, first of all, and I don't recommend that. My kids are required to go to college, so but I didn't. I was a terrible college student, barely graduated high school for that matter. But I went to work in a lumber mill in Roseburg, Oregon, where I grew up. It's the lumber capital of the world. So anybody that doesn't go to college goes and works at a lumber mill. So I was working graveyard at a lumber mill, and I'll never forget one of the first nights I was coming down to work graveyard shift. I was trying to go to college at the same time, didn't work out. But I was coming down the walkway, and they had these big lumber ponds. And there's always floating lumber, and it kind of creates this mist off the pond, right? Very kind of surreal. And these guys are coming up towards me to start the day shift, and they're wearing jackets, and they're proud of the jackets, and they should be, hardworking guys. But the jackets have little armbands that say how long they've been there. And one guy was 20 years, 30 years, 25 years. One guy had 40 years. And I thought to myself, do I want to be doing this for 35 years or 40 years? And I thought, I better do something else. I better do something else quickly. And so I pivoted and got my real estate license. And that was kind of a little bit of my origin story. I've always been entrepreneurial. I started my first business when I was 15, Wind Clear window cleaning.
I love it.
Yeah. And so, I was a hard worker at a young age, but I needed to channel that into something that would give me a way that I could, leverage my talents when you don't have any money, which is where I was at that point in my life.
Well, I mean, what 19-year-old has anything really? I mean, I know I didn't. But passing the test is one thing, because, you could just be a good student and pass the test, or particularly good at educational testing. But to actually then become successful at 19 and then by 24, opening a firm, how did you find clients when you were that young? I would assume that would be a bit of an uphill battle to convince people, hey, let me sell your home at 19.
Yeah. Well, and I just to back up a step for anybody listening to this, that is younger, I was not a great test taker. I failed the first time. So your test score on the national and state exams has nothing to do with your success level.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. I sometimes have people come in and they say, I got 100%. I'm always like, oh, I don't know how you're going to do that.
You studied too much.
Yeah, you're a little too analytical. But yeah, it's a great question. So when I was 19, when I'm going out to interview for jobs, most of the people that I'm interviewing with are, 30, 40, 50 years old. And they look at me like, whoa, I've got kids older than you. Why would I trust my largest financial asset to you? You barely can grow facial hair. So the way I was able to sell myself is to come in more prepared than any other realtor. So I would really go all in on prep. And so I learned something a long time ago that for every 1 minute of prep says 4 minutes of execution. So you got to
Oh,
prepare really, really as if you're going to get there every listing. Like this is, you're not just going for an appointment, you're getting the listing. And if you're getting the listing, why not just do all the work? So that means, all the county research, all the city research, all the zoning research, all the CCNRs, you're just going all in. You're going to know more about that property than the seller when you get there, right? And that would impress people, right?
sure.
And then I would say, I would just, you got to go at the age thing head on if you're young,
Yeah.
right? Because the unsaid is worse than the said, right?
There's an old marketing principle called if you can't fix it, feature it. And this is
Right.
what we're talking about. Yeah.
100%. You take the sting out, right? And you're just going to deal with it right up front. So I would say, obviously, I'm younger than most people that you're interviewing, right? But can I tell you why that's an advantage? And everybody like, yeah, tell me it's an advantage because I'm going to outwork every
Right.
other agent you interview.
Yep.
I'm going to give you all my attention, all my effort, all my energy, and I am completely open to critique. So if you don't like anything I'm doing, you tell me. I'll be the first to change it. But I guarantee you, you will get no one that will work harder than me. And everybody that listens to that has a kid or a grandkid, and they're like, I'm going to give the kid a shot. Right?
Yeah. And I didn't mean to stop you there, but I was so impressed with that because not only is that a nice thing to say, but you also had done the homework and it wasn't just like, hey, I'm going to outwork everyone. I'm going to show you right now how I've already, without saying that, you've probably already outworked the other listing agents who might have come in to, also bid on that business. And so I love that it's backed up by action. And you're right, there is something about giving a young person a shot when they're eager, they seem really authentic, and you sort of want to root for the underdog, right? We like rooting for underdogs. And I think young people have that. Again, you're right. They address the issue head on. Hey, here's why, I don't have 40 clients that I'm dealing with right now. I have you and I need you to be happy so I'm going to do whatever it takes. And you're going to tell me if there's anything I need to change. And I love that. Wow. That was just so perfectly said.
One other spin on that too, that I train to now with agents is, people can read confidence really quickly. And if you come in and you're not confident, it makes everybody uncomfortable really fast.
Yes, it does.
Everybody's like, oh, get out of here as fast as possible. So the question mark is, how do I build confidence? For young people, for every age, though, it's not just young people. The way you build confidence is through competence.
Correct.
And the way competence is built is through rehearsal, practice, and drill. Rehearsal, practice, drill. In the great book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, where he talks about, the 10,000 hour rule, that every master, whether it's a musician, artist, a writer, somebody in sports, they've all crossed the 10,000 hour threshold. So if we relate that to real estate and we say, well, how much have I really, truly, honestly practiced my listing presentation? Have I practiced it 5 hours? Have I practiced it 10 hours? Certainly not 10,000 hours. But have I practiced it 100 hours this year? Probably not. So if you have this expectation that you're going to make $1 million this year and you're not putting the time in to be a master, you got to disconnect there. You want to be the master. You got to act like a master. You got to go all in.
Yeah, I agree. It's very akin to getting physically fit, which, there's a visual component to getting physically fit. But the work that it takes, there's only really one way to do it. Through hard work, I guess you could get implants surgically inserted, which are the facade of muscles. But if you really want actual muscles, you have to be willing to give, that 10,000 hours in the gym. The Beatles, which are talked about in Outliers, the book, are really the perfect example of this, because before they ever recorded their first album, they had 10,000 hours of live studio or live performance because they were playing in Germany for 8 to 12 hours at a time. And so they just got that good. They knew like 500 songs by that, but it really was their sort of, incubation period and obviously we know what they accomplished. And so many others are in that same category of output. But you're right. It's all about practice. It's like, I guess if I was wanting to go to a listing presentation and it was a luxury property, for example, I would probably need to put in a bunch of time on my own to perfect that presentation, run it by a bunch of people, record myself doing it, and then make lots of modifications over and over and over and over again until it didn't sound like a presentation, I guess.
Right.
But you're right. It's all about the practice and the work. And the good news too is 10,000 hours is a pretty daunting number. It's almost like an not conceivable number. But if you just chip away at it, a little bit every day, you put an hour in a day of studying the MLS in your chosen market, or whatever skill you want to develop. Within a year, you probably are going to be on the right track. You're probably going to be like, wow, I just know a whole lot. I'm a big believer of this. You do so many things. You're a brokerage owner, you're a top producer, and of course, an instructor and a coach now. Where do you see, just because I want to dive into the coaching so much. And by the way, again, Jim's coaching website is erealestatecoach.com. He has all sorts of different programs and services for agents, specifically a lot around recruiting too, which I don't see that much of. So maybe you're a team and you're looking to recruit more agents, or maybe you're a brokerage owner. We have a lot of brokerage owners that listen, and you're like me, I'm a recruiter. That's what I do. So I'm interested in learning from Jim too. But before we get to the recruiting stuff, let's talk about just keeping agents productive right now. It's obviously not the easiest time to be a realtor. I would guess we have the NAR lawsuits. We've got buyer agency changing, although I don't actually, we could talk just briefly about buyer agency. But I'm curious to what you're coaching agents to do today to stay productive, even though rates aren't exactly where we want them to be. Inventory is probably not exactly where we want it to be, but we still have to keep working. So how are you keeping your agents working and productive?
Well, there's a magic number in the real estate industry that you have to embrace if you're going to be successful. And I learned this pretty early, and that is that your success as an agent is relative to what I call Q2, and Q2 is the quantity and quality of your database, your sphere of influence. And we hear it all the time, but NAR studies this. It's not like it's some mystical thing. This is truth. And so the latest study shows that 69% of sellers found their agent from a referral. 61% of buyers found their agent through a referral. So the first thing we have to do as agents is accept that and say, okay, number one, before I go chasing rabbits and chasing down all these internet things that people are selling me, first thing I got to do is fix my sphere. And I got to say, is my sphere completely dialed in, number one? And then I need to understand the path is in the math. The numbers are what's going to drive your business, nothing else. So the numbers are very simple. So if I want to close X number of transactions, I take that number times 10. It tells me the exact number of people I need in my sphere of influence. Right. So I want to close 30 transactions, I need 300 people. Then everybody has a gap number. That's the number you have now. It's the difference between what you want, what you have now is your gap. And you got to fill that gap as fast as humanly possible. And then beyond that, I've got to create a 20 to 50 touch point matrix on how I'm going to touch these people over the course of a year to stay top of mind. Now, some of you that are older, like me, that have been in the business 35 years, that number used to be 9 to 12 times a year. Now it's 20 to 50 times a year. Wow. Because every American is hearing a minimum of 5,000 advertising messages a day. Crazy. So we have to cut through the communication jungle to stay top of mind.
And what's nice about what we're talking about is deepening the relationships, deepening the connections we have with our sphere, because the numbers are on our side. When we do that, as Jim said, nearly 7 out of every 10 people choose a realtor either from someone they have already worked with in the past or a referral from somebody who said, you got to work with my buddy, he or she is the greatest. So this is where I think the really fun part about being a realtor comes in, because you can control all of the touch points, right? Like you can set up systems, and we've had episodes on this where you don't, if you're having to touch somebody 20 to 50 times a year, you're certainly not calling them 20 to 50 times going, hey, are you ready to sell your home? Obviously, we're not talking about that. We're talking about ways to provide value, ways to just stay front of mind or back of mind. And there's lots of fun ways to do that. The traditional path would be email newsletters and, client appreciation events and all sorts of, sending out updated comps and celebrating somebody on their home anniversary and all of these things that we're like, yeah, I should do that. But also too, now with social media, we have the ability to see what our clients are doing in their personal lives. And if we're connected with them on LinkedIn, we can see what they're doing in their professional lives. And we can actually take some notes and say like, oh, hey, I saw so-and-so just got a promotion at work, or I saw something for the company this person works at just had a big news story. That's a touch point. I'm going to reach out and be like, hey, I just saw you got a promotion. You're crushing it. It's to me, it's all about building intimacy as best as possible, which is really a lot of effort, because you have to go through and pay attention to what's going on in your clients and your sphere's lives. And I'm curious to get some suggestions about how you might encourage people to get their sphere in order so that they can get more of that 69%
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think you're exactly right. I mean, I coach people that are in, doing 50, 60, 70, $80 million a year, $100 million a year. And when you talk to them, and for any length of time, what happens is every single time with all these top producers, they will say, hey, I just listed my friend's house, or I just sold my buddy a house. They don't look at their clients as transactional units on a spreadsheet. And this is the difference. Weak agents look at their clients as transactional units on a spreadsheet. Strong agents, the strongest agents in America, look at their clients as relationships, and they look at this as friends. And friends refer friends. This is the ultimate aspect of our sphere that most people miss. Is your job is to move people up the ladder of friendship.
Yep.
So they start as an acquaintance, you meet at an open house, and you want to just try to bubble that relationship up to a point where they look at you as, hey, Jim's a friend of mine, and I refer friends to friends. That's the ultimate goal. So how do you get there, right? So the way you're going to get there is through communication. And then communication is going to look like not always trying to sell them something or get something out of them, right? So the great book, Go Giver by Bob Berg, great book about this kind of concept. I'm just going to give you a couple examples. Number one is understanding all of your clients' aspirational goals. So if I was talking to you, I'd say, hey man, tell me what do you want to get done in the next 6 months to a year? What are your big goals? And you're going to tell me something, right? I want to open a bakery. I want to go to Hawaii, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to say, oh, okay, now I'm going to be on the watch for that. And if I can help you with that, I found a great article on opening a bakery.
I love that.
To you. Hey, I've been to Hawaii. I just had this happen, by the way, for my honeymoon. I got married 6 years ago. One of my agents heard that we're going to Maui. He bought me a book. Scott Lewis, if he's listening to this, a ninja, amazing agent, top producing agent. He buys me a book about Maui and marks in the book those favorite places that he went in Maui.
Oh, that's great.
So these are the kinds of things that elevate relationships to friendships, right? And when you stop thinking about how many referrals can I pull out of this, that's not the way that top agents operate. Top agents operate in a whole different mindset. Now you need to put some numbers behind it. And here's one thing I look at as I say to my students is you want to go big and go small every day. Let me give you an example of that.
Sure.
Going big is I'm going to do something that touches a large group of people every single day. So that could be my email newsletter, right? It could be that I'm doing a social media post, right? Something big. It could be I'm doing a voicemail drop to every single person in my database, something big. And then I'm going to go small. Going small means I'm going to have personal interactions with when we put a number behind it, and it's very specific, 10 people a day. And I'm going to have a phone call, a text, a direct message where I'm going to be physically talking to somebody 10 times a day, right? And that may look differently, like your examples of using, social media as your own CRM, looking for life change and having comments about that. All great. But let me tell you the secret weapon I see with top agents. The secret weapon, and it's the least expensive, most effective, and kind of undercover prospecting is networking. And networking just means I am breaking bread with people or having lunch, coffee, dinner, drinks with somebody 3 times a week, minimum. If I'm doing that 3 times a week with people in my sphere of influence, your business will explode. There is no way it won't explode. Now, in the meetings, do I have to talk about real estate? No, I don't. Real estate will come up because you are in real estate. But you don't have to sit there and talk real estate all the time. You're just going to talk, and you're going to create friendships and relationships with people. I'm telling you guys, that is the most effective way to lead generate is networking. So here's my goal, and I'll just give you a quick model, and I know I'm talking a long time, but
this is all perfect.
My quick model for success with agents is the 4-1-1-1 strategy. You're going to spend 1 hour a day in lead gen, primarily focused on your sphere of influence. But I'm going to add one more pipeline to it, whether it's FSBOs, expireds, absentee owners, something else. 20% of my time there, 80% of my time on sphere. 1 hour a day on lead gen. My goal of that hour is to set one appointment with a seller, a buyer, or a sphere member. Sphere member is just as valuable as a buyer or seller meeting. Because I'm setting one appointment, I'm going on one appointment a day. And then the most important thing that every agent needs to do every day is add one new person to their sphere every single day. So that's like what we call our perfect model.
Yeah, it's a great point, because if you do add one person a day, I don't know how many business days there are in the year, 220 something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
So, you're adding 200 plus people to your if you could add 200 plus people to your database, which is essentially meeting one person every weekday roughly and getting their information, of course, and putting it in your CRM, and then as Jim said, developing a communication strategy. Like, how am I going to touch this person 20 to 50 times over the next 12 months? And then you're just literally running the process, right?
Yeah.
It's okay, today I'm going to check out their social media, tomorrow I'm going to invite them to lunch, or whatever the process is. Every quarter I'm going to reach out to them by telephone. Every once a year I'll do a sit down, whatever. There's lots of ways to do this. We obviously, there's no one size fits all, but this is, I think, the biggest missing piece that realtors oftentimes fall out of that habit of adding people to their database, because they get caught up with all the to-dos of the day. They have clients they need to service. And of course, when we're dealing with transactions, things just fly at us at any given time, and they really require a lot of times our immediate attention, and it takes us out of building the business. I'm working now in the business as opposed to on the business. I wanted to ask you, Jim, too. It's been really interesting. So, of course, I know everybody is sick of hearing about buyer agency representation. I got it. We're not going to have a big conversation about that. Hopefully, everybody has received some training from their brokerage or from their association about how to proceed in a way that's sort of mindful and authentic, and certainly compliant. So we're not going to talk too much about this, but I wanted to ask your opinion as a coach, because on this show, I talk to top 1% producers, and I've asked every one of them, has this impacted your business? Now, obviously, we haven't seen a lot of 0% co-ops, at least here in Chicago yet, but we are going to start seeing those. It will happen. People will have to deal with it, and buyer representation is changing. Okay. Well, it isn't really changing. It's just being a lot more specific now. I'd argue that it really isn't changed.
Yeah.
It's just more transparent, which I think is a good thing, but
Yeah.
certainly a more difficult thing to explain, as in the past. Maybe the reason why we're in this situation is it wasn't explained well before, but now we do have to explain it, and we should. I have found that talking to all these top agents, not one of the people I've talked to is worried about it. And so I'm curious to get your thoughts on it, for anyone out there who's nervous about saying, gosh, I'm going to have to tell my buyers they might have to pony up. That's a tricky thing. Just curious on your thoughts about that altogether.
It's a great question. I actually taught the ABR class for 10 years for NAR. So I was pretty versed in that. I've been teaching just in the last 6 months a class called the Buyer Representation Mastery course across the country for brokerages and boards. So it's a great topic. And I think what you're seeing with top agents is that a lot of top agents have already adopted a standard of, I'm only working with loyal buyers that are either under contract or would have no problem signing a contract. Right now that we're going to have to all be under contract. I think the scary point for agents that are maybe not used to having the confidence level that some of these top agents have is the biggest fear point is the commission conversation. Like, how do I explain the commission to a buyer in a way that doesn't freak them out, right? So number one, and I'm telling all my students this, you got 3 things you need to have right now. Don't wait till August, like today. You need to have, and number one, a buyer presentation, just like a seller presentation. You should have already built that, right? We've got a 12 points that we believe should go into a buyer presentation. But that buyer presentation should have proprietary value built in. In other words, you can't just be doing what every other realtor is doing. You got to actually have some reasons why I'm going to use you as opposed to the other 10,000 agents in this market. So proprietary value, unique selling propositions are so important. I can give you a few if you want to go
Please.
down that road. An example would be, the misconception, like if you go on TikTok and you start talking about buyer representation like I have, you get all the trolls pile onto you and they'll say, why would I pay an agent 10 grand or 20 grand to open a door for me? I can do that myself. Why would I pay an agent that kind of money to search for homes? I can do that for that myself. And you know what? We need to listen to what's being said there, because that's the perception that buyers have of us. So what are we going to do about that? I'll give you an example. So in my buyer presentation, obviously, on the flip side of that, when NAR does studies of buyers and they say, what's the most valuable thing a buyer's agent can bring to you? Number one is helping them find the right home. It's been number one for 20 years.
Yeah.
It's always been number one. As long as I've been teaching, it's been number one. So we have a dichotomy here. We got to solve this. So here's the way I'm going to solve this. I'm going to give it two strategies. When I'm sitting with you, I'm going to say, so obviously one of the services I'm going to provide to you is helping you find the right property to purchase. Now, a lot of people would just plug you into an MLS system, or you could plug yourself into Realtor.com or Zillow, and you can just get a stream of properties coming to you. Every agent can do that. But here's what I'm going to do. Now I'm going to add proprietary value. I'm going to add some unique. I'm going to hand curate every listing that's sent to you. So what that means is that I'm going to get a copy of every listing sent to you, and I'm going to tell you my thoughts on every property that's sent, whether you should look at it or not. Now, you might say, Jim, that sounds like a lot of work. The 50% of the agents in America closed 2 deals last year, less than 2 deals. So when you tell me you can't handle this, that's BS. You can handle this. It's not like the end of the world. If you want to start closing, you get to 50 transactions, let's talk about the work involved. But you're not closing enough transactions for most of you.
Well, and at that point, you hire somebody to do the other things that are taking up your time. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And then I go into the no stone unturned conversation. The no stone unturned conversation is, listen, here's the reality. We're in a low supply market, and we have been for the last 10 years. And what that means is a lot of the best listings never hit the market. They never hit MLS. So my job really is to go way deeper than MLS. You're going to get the MLS stuff for sure. And I'm going to give you my hand curation on that. But I'm also going to be looking at coming soon listings by networking with the top 10% agents in the market that are doing 90% of the business. I'm going to look at for sale by owners. I'm going to look at expired listings. I'm going to dive into neighborhoods that you're interested in. If you want me to reach out and canvas that neighborhood, and I'll shake loose anybody that's thinking about selling.
Now I'm only pausing you because this is a super cool idea. I'm so sorry, Jim. Jim is saying something that is gold right now, because I just want to make sure we pause for a moment to really get this idea out there. It's very rare. I've done almost 600 episodes here, and this is really one of the first times this particular idea has been brought up. So what Jim's talking about is, you have a buyer, and that buyer wants to live in a particular subdivision, neighborhood, community, wherever. And you could, in theory, print up little flyers or something of value to deliver to the homes in that area, saying, hey, I know your home's not on the market. I have a buyer that desperately wants to move into this area. Well, you would probably say desperately, but you would say, I work with people who want to move in this area. If you are ever think, I'm not doing a good job of this, but we get the idea. You can go out and look for listings as a buyer's agent.
100%. And it's pure gold to do that. I mean, we can go into the stats around that and how successful that is. But it absolutely works 100%. Live buyer prospecting is the best prospecting on earth when you're doing cold or warm kind of prospecting. But let me give you the third thing. We can't go through all 12, but the third thing I'm going to talk about in the buyer presentation, which is proprietary value as well, is I want to put a bright line here. And I want to say, but finding the home is the easy part. Because they perceive it's the easy part anyway. It's not really easy.
Because they have Zillow. Of course they think it is.
They perceive it to be easy. So I'm going to say finding the home is the easy part. The hard part for me as your agent is when we find the home you want to buy, because that's where my work really begins. Here's what I'm going to do for you. And this is where I get into what my presentation is called deep research. So I'm going to do deep research on every property. This means I'm going to go to the county, pull all the permits that have been pulled on that property. I'm going to look at the zoning. I'm going to look at the overlays for the property. I'm going to get the disclosure statement and go through that with a fine-tooth comb. I'm going to tell you what the seller paid for the property the last time they refinanced the property. I'm going to even talk to the neighbors on either side of the property, ask them what they know about the neighborhood, if they like the neighborhood, what don't they like about the neighborhood, and if they know anything about the house that we should know. By the time I'm done, you're going to know more about that house than the seller knows about the house. Now, but as I'm going, and I can go on and on and on, I'm going to show you neighborhood trends and everything else, but sure. I'm going to create a situation where I'm a category of one. There is no one that is going to come to them and give them the level of value I'm delivering. And they're going to know it in about 10 minutes of being with me.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to eventually get down to how I'm compensated, right? I'm going to get down to the compensation question, which is the big fear point.
Sure.
But that doesn't have to be fearful, guys. It can be so easy and so seamless. It's all in your confidence level, which is built by competence, which is built by rehearsal, drill, practice. So what I'm going to say is, hey, guys, now how am I paid? I'm paid a fee, and my fee is X, but it's a success fee. And this is the key language. It's a success fee.
I love that. Yes.
And the success fee just means that you will not pay me a nickel, a dime, a penny, unless You find the perfect home for you. We negotiate the best price that you're comfortable with. We get your financing in order. We go through all the appraisals, the inspections, the home gets underwritten. You get everything you want in that house. We get all the way to closing. You're handed the keys. That's when I'm paid. I'm not paid a dime if you don't close. So don't think there's some kind of hourly clock ticking. I'm not like a taxi. And here's what's going to happen. My fee, I'm going to try to get as much of my fee from the seller as possible. So when we write an offer, I'm going to ask the seller to pay all or most of that fee on your behalf. Now, some sellers will agree, some sellers won't agree, and that's a negotiation. But this is going to be completely transparent. You're going to know exactly what you're getting into at every transaction. You have the power to say, no, I can't afford to do it, or I don't want to do it in every transaction. And here's what I'm going to recommend to all the agents that are listening. For most strong agents, when you have a listing, a seller, and you have an offer come in, a lot of us do a net sheet, and we say, hey, here's what you're going to net. We have our little estimate calculator. Maybe we pulled from the title company app, or the title company's doing it for us. And we say, well, based on this offer, you get X. We're going to start doing the same thing with buyers, guys. We're going to say, based on the offer that we've negotiated, here's what it would cost you at closing, which includes your down payment, your closing costs, my fees, everything else, right? So I could go on and on and on about this conversation, but that's kind of the way we work it.
And I do also, I'm curious to get your thoughts. If somebody says, well, I understand now that buyers are now paying and, whatever, they may read a story online and they're not probably going to understand the full sort of history of it. But I think, it's really important to, I would love to get your your thoughts, because you may have a different opinion.
Sure.
But if somebody says, well, hey, okay, it seems like I'm paying a new fee. Last time I didn't have to pay a fee. And that's, last time I bought a home, I didn't cut a check to anyone. Well, actually, and that's, I think, where you could bring some data in and say, let me tell you about how the system was set up, how it worked. And you actually did pay fees. They weren't really easily disclosed or transparent. You weren't technically cutting a check. However, if we just sort of think about, economics and traditional supply and demand, like, it's built in to the price, or, anyway. And again, I'm not a practicing realtor, so forgive me for not saying that in the right appropriate way, but we understand that this is, we're now just bringing something a little bit more to the forefront. Yes, there's technically a step where they may have to write a check these days. They didn't have to do that before, but they were paying that one way or the other. And now they're just paying it more on the front end versus wrapping it into the mortgage, or however it wasn't really wrapped into the mortgage. It was part of the price. But it can make the strong argument that the fees have been paid this whole time. And it was just not super clear who was paying or how the fees were being paid.
Yeah, I agree. And the way the way I explain it on the seller side of the fence, which is as important to this whole conversation too, is to say, let me ask you, when you bought the house that you own now, did you write a check to your buyer's agent, or did the seller pay for that on your behalf? And they'll always be like, well, the seller wrote the check. Okay, and can I tell you why that happened?
Yeah.
And they'll say, oh, well, yeah, I'll tell you why it happened. Because what happens is you paid the seller's price, and that price paid for the seller's representation and your representation. But what it allowed you to do is something very special. It allowed you to finance the representation costs into the transaction over 30 years, which is what most buyers prefer to do. Of course. Which is what I recommend, that we still offer buyer agent compensation. And we can't do it in MLS, but we can certainly do it when people call us. And I recommend it because you're going to open up the buyer pool. The studies right now are that 30 to 50% of the buyers in the market can't afford to write their agents a check.
Right.
So if we don't give them a way to finance this transactional cost, what's going to happen is you're going to lose 30 to 50% of your buyer pool, which most of us don't want to lose. It's going to cost you money, and we don't want you to do that. And most people, when you explain it that way, they're like, oh, okay, I get it.
I'm also curious too, as another option, if there's going to be a way that lenders can kind of come to the rescue here and create a commission loan or of sorts, where it can be financed. Maybe it's its own loan with its own rate. I mean, I don't know why banks wouldn't want to do that. I don't know about the compliance associated there. I know I don't think it's been done yet by any lender, but I would hope that there is going to be something to help out those home buyers who are now, oh gosh, now I need to come up with another 10 grand. Right. And again, we're not seeing a lot of that today. But of course, there are going to be sellers who are going to start testing the waters to see if they don't have to pay out of pocket for the buyer fees. So I'll be curious. Do you obviously nobody has a crystal ball, but do you think that lenders could possibly come up with a solution to this, or or we're not sure yet?
100%. I think my guess would be that Fannie and Freddie will roll out a way that that buyers can finance their buyer closing costs. I mean, and this is just a part of your closing costs. I mean, the way to look at it. So I absolutely think that will happen. I wish it would have happened before NAR made the settlement, so our life
Me too.
would be way easier. But it didn't. But my personal guess is that yes, that will happen.
Well, I want to switch gears. Thank you for that opinion. I want to switch gears because one of the things we don't ever rarely talk about on the show is recruiting agents. And as teams have become more and more significant over the last, ever since I've been in this industry, 14 years, I've slowly seen the rise of teams for a lot of different reasons. And also brokerages are always looking to attract agents. Teams are always looking to attract agents, or maybe somebody's listening wants to develop a team. I know that this is a big passion of yours, is some best practices around attraction versus like chasing, right? So how does one think about attracting a producing agent to their team, or to partner up with, or to join their brokerage? Because we know that agents get recruiting calls all day long, every week, from every firm that's out there. Every firm's always recruiting pretty much. So they're getting a lot of these calls. And how do you sort of cut through the noise to actually get to a good sized producers, sort of get on their radar so that you can actually cut through the other 5 calls they got that week about recruiting?
Well, here's what let me tell you what offices and team leaders should not do first, and they should not focus on commission. And this is the number one trap and the number one mistake that brokerage owners and team leaders make, is they think, well, if I just offer the lowest commission, then lowest caps, I should say the highest commission, lowest caps, then I'm going to attract all the agents in my market. And it's just absolutely not true. And the reason it's not true is because as soon as you go to $5, somebody in the market's going to come to $4. And then
race to the bottom.
It's a race to the bottom. And what has to happen in order for you to have that low of cost structure is you end up having to cut services. So you're going to cut services, and basically you're just giving people an umbrella to work under. And, you're offering zero value. In fact, what I'm seeing with some of the most successful offices and brokerage leaders and team leaders in the country doing is going the complete reverse of that. And they are saying, let's build out, again, when I say this word proprietary, but it's important, is proprietary value that makes me unique in the marketplace. That is actually my value proposition. So if you're a brokerage owner or team leader listening, if you were to take out a piece of paper and write down, what are the 5 reasons why someone should come to work for me, 5 things I do differently or better than anyone else in the market, what would those be? And when you actually ask people that, most people don't have an answer to that. And so it can't just be a cult of personality. It can't be just thinking, I'm so great that everybody's going to come to work for me. Yes, people have to like you, 100%. But beyond liking you, there has to be actual value behind coming to work for you. The only reason, and when people call me and say, Jim, why should I come to work for you? My answer to that is always the same. There's only 2 reasons you should come to work for me. A, I can help you make more money, or B, I can make your life easier. I know that I can do both, but I need 20 minutes of your time to show you. Now, so what it's about is it's about the number of transactions closed. Yeah. So I've got to prove to you that I can help you close more transactions now or with me than you're closing now. That's it. So that is our whole focus of our presentation when we're talking to people is, let me show you how I think we can help you close more transactions and make your life easier, because work-life balance for agents is super important, especially at a high level. Time control is super important, and people have this desire that I don't want to kill myself working. I want to enjoy the money I'm making. So all of that plays a factor into your recruiting presentation, your recruiting approach.
Yeah, I agree. It's we are a perfect example of what you were talking about, because when we started, when my boss started our brokerage, we were a 1-person company at that time, and I came on board a few years after it started, and we had to recruit agents. And when you're a 2-person, 3-person brokerage, you just don't have a lot, or we didn't have a lot to offer. Maybe there are smaller brokerages that have a lot to offer. We did not. And so we went the cost way, or the cost savings way. We went highest commissions, lowest fees, because we thought, our only trump card, and it worked to build us hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of agents. However, we weren't really attracting top producers. We were attracting great agents, whether they're part-time or full-time, but we weren't attracting the really massive producers. And the reason is because which we learned 10 years in, they don't, top producers don't care about giving away 10, 15, 20% of their income if they're getting some other needs met by their brokerage, making their life easier, as Jim said, or increasing production. So they're happy to give away 10, 20, maybe even 30% of their commission if these other these other things are being solved. So I like that. And I'm curious to, so if I want to recruit somebody to my team, I have to figure out first what is my true value proposition? Why not just, if I say I can help you grow your production, I better be able to explain in detail how that is actually going to manifest, as well as saving somebody time or solving some pain point. I better have an answer for that. And I think that's where practice comes in, as you were saying, but also just really getting clear on why somebody needs to join you, and then find out what their pain point is and give them a solution.
Yeah. And the way you have to look at it is, I look at it as we're NFL coaches, we're NBA owners of our organization. And when you're doing high level recruiting is different than recruiting new agents. And so this is there's like a bright line in the sand.
Yep.
New agents are excited to come to work. They'll come to work for anybody, anytime. You can recruit them in an hour, right?
Yep.
They're just so excited. And I'm being facetious, but it's easy to recruit new agents.
Correct.
It's much, much, much more difficult to recruit experienced agents. But here's the problem with recruiting new agents is that there's an 87% attrition rate.
Right.
So over the first 2 years, you're going to lose 87% of them, no matter how good your training is, no matter how good your coaching or mentorship. And they take the most amount of effort and time and energy and from you as a brokerage owner leader. I've got to completely let go of that. And I got to say, new agent recruiting is not where I'm at. I'm going after experienced agents. And that's going to totally transform my company if I just really go after that. The question is now, how do I do it? We have a 7-step plan for doing it that's very specific. But here's the thing. When you approach an experienced producing agent, 99 times out of 100, when you say, hey, I'd love to do a recruiting presentation with you. I'd love to do
I'm happy. I'm good where I am. Thanks.
Exactly. It's not going to go anywhere. They're going to be like, okay, no thanks. Right. So here's the thing is that everybody's happy till they're not. So this is a really important thing to think about. But we've all seen people in our markets in the last year that have moved. And you're like, damn, they moved. They didn't even come talk to me. Yeah. They didn't even pick up the phone to have a conversation with me. Here's why they didn't do that. Because you didn't open the door. And so it's not about you going in for the throat like you would do with a new agent. It's about you building a relationship with them so that they know the door is open if and when they decide to raise their hand and say, I'm not happy. Because what happens is they're completely happy on Friday. On Monday, they're pissed because the broker screwed them over. The technology failed. They have a bad interaction with a staff member. Somebody else in the office screwed them over. There's something went wrong. And now they go to the people that have opened the doors and that have said, we want you. So what I have to do is I have to identify a target audience on my market, call it 300, 400, 500 agents that you love to have. Then I need to open doors with all of them. And that's as simple as letting them know why you're attracted to them as an agent. So it might be to say, hey, John, Jim, Bob, Susan, I just want to say, I was talking to one of our agents this morning I know you're in transaction with, and they said you did such a phenomenal job in that appraisal negotiation. And I just want to say thank you because it's, working with quality people is kind of rare in our industry today. Just want to say congratulations. Thank you for doing a transaction with us. If there's ever an opportunity to talk about, what we can offer you, I'd love that opportunity. I know it's probably not in the cards today, but if it ever is, I want you to know that door is wide open for you. Now, what I'm going to start to do now is I'm just going to start to build relationship.
Yeah.
And most of us don't have any relationships with any of these 300 or 400 or 500 people we're trying to recruit. I got to find ways to build relationships. And we give people tons and tons of strategies on opening the door, getting in position, and then getting ready to be at bat when they say, yes, I want to come talk to you. I got 20 minutes. Sell me on why I should come to your company. Then I have to have a beautiful recruiting presentation ready to go. It's to stack value, right? So
I love that. And, celebrating what we call celebrating superlatives, or in this case, Jim brought a great example of calling the co-op broker, right? Saying, hey, so and we do this too, where we send, well, I call after, but I send an email saying, hey, we just, congratulations, you just closed this deal at such as this property. Thanks for working with our agent. We're so grateful that you guys got this closed. And then assuming the agent told us they did a great job, we'll say, hey, the agent said you were amazing. And, hey, congratulations again. I don't ask for, hey, join our firm in that email, because I don't want to take away from the authentic, hey, I'm really, really happy that you did this. And I just want to congratulate you. Then when I'll call, say, hey, just also wanted to leave a message, super happy. By the, and then I'll go through that same thing. And then I'll say, hey, by the way, just like you said, I'm sure you're perfectly happy where you are. And I like saying that because it doesn't, someone's either happy or they're not, right? Like there's nothing I'm going to say. So all I want to do is just kind of put them at ease and say, hey, I'm sure you're happy where you're at, where you're at's a great firm. If that ever changes, please call me, because you're exactly who we want. And I'm going to stay in touch with you so that you don't forget about me, but I will be patient and I am here for you if anything ever changes, blah, 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 and then you, like you said, you just open the door. And then just like you were saying with someone's sphere of influence, you set up those touch points, same thing on the recruiting side. And this is also the same way too. Newer agents could learn from top agents. Is new agents, I think, miss a huge opportunity. I know we're switching gears, getting away from recruiting just for a moment, but if you're a new agent listening to the show, and we have a lot of them, write a list of the producers, the realtors in your local market that you really admire, and make a commitment to call, even, whether they work at your company or whatever company, it doesn't matter. Reach out to them over the next year, make a list of 50 of them and say, hey, I really admire you. I love what you do. Maybe give them a specific reason why you admire them. Could I pick your brain for 15 minutes? Could I bring some coffee into your office? I know you're busy, but I just wanted to shake your hand and just say hi and introduce myself because I really admire. That would be an extraordinarily smart thing to do for a new agent, because then they could go and get an audience with that top producer for at least a few minutes and say, hey, I'd love a couple of quick tips if you have any, or I'm struggling in this part of my business. What might you suggest? And they will just they'll give you the answers. So it's the whole reason we built this show. This whole show was built on, if I asked a top producer who doesn't know me to share their secrets with the world, would they do that? I thought, I don't know. And sure enough, they will. I found out that they do. They have no problem doing that.
I will say that the number one recruiting opportunity we've had in the last 10 years is upon us right now. And that is the NAR settlement. So you need to look at this as the number one recruiting opportunity and be all in on this right now. And the scripts that we're giving to our team, our brokerage coaching students, we give them a lot, but one of the things is, if you're doing live classes in your offices, invitations to those live classes, if you created a buyer broker presentation or a buyer presentation, that's a great one when you're talking about opinion. If I called you and said, hey, we just rolled out a new buyer presentation, I just ran the numbers, you're one of the top 20 buyer agents in the market. I'd love your honest feedback. I mean, you can be completely brutal with me, but I'd love to get your feedback on what you think we built here. Would you have coffee with me? And people will appreciate it because it's an ego stroke.
Sure.
And they'll love it. But also, I like the idea of my friends at the Ninja program have something they call the pit, where they have agents get into the pit, so to speak, where around a conference room, they're going to fire at each other objections, and they'll be practicing scripts with each other and role playing. And I think that's such a great idea when it comes to this whole buyer representation issue, and inviting other offices and other agents from other companies and say, hey, we're having a whole role playing session this Wednesday on this whole buyer presentation stuff. We've got some scripts that we've rolled out that we feel good about. If you got something you got, come on, let's all work together to get better at this. There'll be a lot of agents that will respond to that.
I love that. I have not seen that. We're one of the largest realtor markets in the country here in Chicago. We have about 46,000 agents, and I'm not on every mailing list from every brokerage, of course. And there's probably a lot that don't email to me, but I get a lot of emails. I have yet to see a come one, come all. Let's all practice how to get better at buyer agency representation. Yeah. I have yet to I know brokerages are doing it, certainly. And so that's a wonderful idea, is to invite people from outside of your brokerage to participate, maybe bring in an expert, somebody who teaches this. Oh, and by the way, we should also you talked about ABR designation. I believe, and I hope I'm not wrong about this, NAR had made that a complimentary thing. I don't know if it still is. Is it still complimentary? Yeah. Everybody should go do this. Go to nar.realtor and look for the ABR designation. It used to cost money, and now it doesn't. So you're going to need this anyway, as of course, if you're working with buyers. So go go get that designation. Boy, Jim, you're really providing a tremendous amount of value. I I am also curious to ask you back to agent production. Um, what do you recommend on, we talked about sort of these touch points, like 20 to 50 touch points a year per person in your database.
Yeah.
So let's say I sell somebody a home, they move in, and now, the stats say I'm probably 7 to 9 years before they are going to move. So now I have to keep that relationship going, assuming I want to be in the business in 7 to 9 years, because I want that repeat business.
Yeah.
And what would you recommend to make sure that those people don't forget that I was the one that sold them the home? And obviously the answer is, yeah, you stay in touch, you call, you text, you email, and yes, and I'm not asking for a secret magic bullet that that no one else knows, but what do you typically suggest to agents so that people don't fall through the cracks once they've already transacted?
Well, one of the things is a simple thing that I'd say 95% of agents don't do is at the day you close that transaction, you're coming back to your CRM and you're flagging their home anniversary date, the interest rate they paid for the house, which is now today is going to be super important over the next 2 to 3 years, and their loan type, their loan if they had PMI insurance, everything you can record in your CRM about that. But now every year when their home anniversary rolls around, of course, people can send a card and an email and that kind of thing. But you're not doing that. You're leveling up, and you're going to call them and say, "Hey guys, it's now time for your annual home equity assessment, and I'm just going to give you a quick update on what's happened with your home value. Good news, it looks like your home's gone up $20,000 in value. Congratulations." And then a couple of years from now, it's going to happen, and maybe as little as a year from now. And by the way, guys, you guys financed at 7%. Interest rates are now down to 4.5% or 5% or whatever the number is going to be. I've got a great lender. If you're considering a refi, they could probably save you some dollars. Would you like me to refer you over? And I'm giving value. The spring, summer of every market, I'm adding value by saying, hey guys, spring, summer is when most people do a lot of work on their houses. I've got vendor relationships with most of the best talented contractors in the market area. They give you the best prices, the best service. If you got some work you want to do, reach out to me and I'll put you in touch. So you want to just keep that high level, value driven conversation with them. But again, it's driving towards friendship. So I want to try to be more than that. I want to try to continue to have even a deeper relationship, not just a transactional relationship, but a deeper relationship. But those are a couple of value add points that you can do really easily.
I love that. And Jim, I could keep you here all day, and I would love to keep you here all day, but you are a busy man with a brokerage to run, lots of agents to service, and of course, coaching clients to service as well, and podcasts to make and books to write. So I will let Jim get on with his busy day, but I would love to have Jim back because he really gave about 10 solid strategies in our conversation about how you could grow your business, attract other agents as well if you're looking to do that, and just be top of mind. And really, it boils down to a lot is do your homework, right? Be prepared. That old Boy Scout motto: come, practice your presentations, bring data with you, have so much stack the deck with so much value that it'll be very difficult for somebody not to understand your value, right? If you have to learn how to effectively communicate it, but you also have to have it. So have that, like, as Jim was saying at the beginning, no one's going to work harder for you than me. And here I'm going to show you exactly what that means. Because of course, talk is cheap. It's like every brokerage says in the recruiting side, we have the best training and coaching. Well, if everybody says that, that probably isn't. I want to know more specifics, right? So you have to prove your value to your clients, or if you're recruiting agents, and there's a lot of great ways to do that. So we're talking about a lot of communication. I think it sounds like these are communication skills that anyone really can develop or sharpen those tools. And this is the year to do that, because we're basically by sharpening communication, we increase our relationships with people, we deepen those relationships, and we of course get more effortless referrals. You mentioned Bob Berg earlier. He is the king of referrals. I think he has a book called Endless Referrals, or he has a lot of books, but Endless Referrals is a really good book. It's probably 1,000,000 years old now, but it's probably been revised. If you read anything by Bob Berg, you're going to it'll change your perspective. And also too, I love the fact that you mentioned, don't worry too much about price when you're dealing with buyers. Just make sure you explain it correctly, and what there's always a solution to any challenges. So I want to really encourage all of our listeners to do a few things. First, I want you to subscribe to Jim's podcast, which is Real Estate Coach. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. It's available everywhere podcasts are found. And let's check out Jim's coaching, because this is the kind of thing Jim does with each of his coaching clients. So erealestatecoach.com is where you can learn about his coaching services. And if you would like to see Jim come on our show more often, let us know, and we can have him back. We'd love to have him back. Jim, this has been a real treasure for me. On behalf of the audience, I want to thank you. And by the way, one last thing. Jim's books. We have a link to his 3 books on Amazon in our show notes. Please check his books out as well. Jim, thank you on behalf of the audience. We really appreciate your time. Again, super, super impressed with your pedigree and all of the things you've accomplished and continue to accomplish, and just your common sense approach to growing a business. Really encourage our agents to explore your coaching options, and our agents explore our audience to and my agents too explore Jim's coaching options. And then, of course, on behalf of Jim and myself, we thank the audience as well for sticking around to the end of the episode. Thank you for supporting us, supporting our show. Check out our sponsors. We appreciate they're the reason we can continue to do this show. And please tell a friend. Think of one other realtor that, boy, I can't think of any realtor that wouldn't benefit from hearing this particular episode, and it isn't because of me. Please send them a link so that they can hear all the great strategies that Jim gave over this last hour. So tell a friend about our show. That's really how you can help us grow, and also help Jim's podcast grow by subscribing to Real Estate Coach and telling everyone about his podcast as well. Jim, we are so grateful to have you on the show. Thank you. And we will see everybody on the next episode. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.